Nick and Audrey took a trip together 4 years ago that turned out to be a murder scene. They were taking a trip around Europe, but in the end, they had to figure out who killed a very important person. A millionaire's secret. The killer did it because he was going to get a legacy worth millions of dollars. Years went by, and now, in 2023, it looks like Nick and Audrey quit their jobs and moved on to start their own detective service so they could help people who needed it. Since they were still new in business, it was hard for them to find customers. Clients. One night, as they talked about the future of their business, they got a call from someone they didn't know. It turns out the answer is Maharaja. On the call, Maharaja told them he was getting married and asked them to come. He also told them not to worry about anything because he'd take care of everything. Whatever they wanted. After what they went through 4 years ago, Audrey didn't want to go to the wedding party at first. Nick tried to get her to come to the party a long time ago, but she didn't want to. It had been a long time since her last holiday. As soon as they got to Maharaja's private island, they were greeted by Maharaja and Claudette, a beautiful French girl from Paris who was in love with him. They also met the colonel, who chose to become Maharaja's bodyguard after what happened 4 years ago. Along with another guard named Louis, he was his bodyguard. After Nick and Audrey got to know some of the other guests, Maharaja led them to their rooms. The place, which they thought was a room at first, turned out to be a house. To them, when they saw how beautiful the house was, they were shocked. Nick and Audrey were amazed by the villa's automatic roof and wardrobe full of expensive clothes. For rare guests like them, there were clothes, a big bed, tasty food, and gifts. Nick and Audrey were amazed by how big the wedding was when it happened. Francisco met Audrey when she was by herself. He is well known for playing football. Francisco was asked to come because, in addition to being famous, he was also a partner in Maharaja's company. Audrey and Nick get some food to eat after getting to know him, but then 2 other women told Audrey that she was taking too much food. Sekou and Amani were their names. After they left, Audrey met the younger sister of the Maharaja, Sarah, who was drawing her hand with henna. Sarah told her friend that she was sitting alone because she didn't like parties with a lot of people. She also thought that when her brother got married, she wouldn't get the attention she deserved. Same amount of care from her brother as she was getting now. Francisco, Sekou, and Amani showed up in the middle of the conversation. They got into a fight, and it turned out that none of them had been in a good relationship. None of them, including Sarah, have ever gotten along with each other. About their pasts, they made fun of each other. Soon after that, the host stated that the next event would be dancing to welcome the bride. Since Maharaja is an Indian, they did a Bollywood-style Indian dance. Movies. In the middle of the dance, everyone broke up into 2 groups to make a way. Maharaja rode out from behind the curtain on an elephant, but he was very strange. Little strange, until Maharaja suddenly fell to the ground in the middle of the crowd. He was stuck with a knife on his back. When his face cover was taken off, it wasn't Maharaja, but Louis. When the other agents panicked out of fear, Nick took the initiative to act right away. Run out of the building to find the real Maharaja. When he got to the beach, the thief was holding Maharaja as a hostage on a boat. He tried to catch them, but the person who took them shot him and ran away. During this time, Audrey took pictures of things that seemed odd, like a burned blanket with blood on it. Stains on it. Nick came back soon after and got everyone together. He had looked at the case and come to the conclusion that if someone tried to kidnap if someone was as rich as Maharaja, they wouldn't work alone. One of them got off the island with Maharaja, so the other might still be there. Be near them. It could be one of the guests or one of the people who knows him best. It might be Sarah, Francisco, Sekou, Amani, or even Claudette. They started blaming each other because they had never trusted each other, but Nick settled them down. They hunted them down and told everyone not to leave the island until the offender was found. Nick and Audrey went back to their house after that. They put a table and a big vase in front of the front door to make sure the bad guy couldn't get in. Someone knocked on the door right before they went to sleep. At first, they were scared, but it turned out to be Francisco. He said that Claudette must be the one who did it. He said that Claudette used to be poor and that she only married Maharaja to get money of his money, but before she married Maharaja, she had to sign away a lot of it. Maharaja had a contract that said she had no right to ask for anything if they were to get a divorce. Claude blamed her for the crime because he thought she wanted to kidnap him, her own husband, in exchange for all of his money. Someone knocked on the door again while she was talking. They were scared, so they told Francisco to hide in the closet while they opened the door. It was Claudette, it turned out. She begged them urgently to find her husband right away. Audrey hugged her because she was so worried, but she held a gun behind her back. Claudette's back. They thought Francisco's words were true right away, but Claudette said all of a sudden that Sarah or Francisco must be the one who did it. Claudette told them that Maharaja was too nice to Sarah and that she was afraid to say anything because of it. Lose all of her brother's attention, she might end up taking him. She also said that Francisco could also be to blame because Maharaja was there. Had found out Francisco's dark secret, which he had been trying to hide, and that he was a murderer. Afraid that the secret might get out and everyone would know it. Nick and Audrey didn't know who to trust, Claudette or Francisco. Soon after, there was another knock on the door. They told Claudette right away to hide behind a large flower vase. Sarah was there when they opened the door. She immediately said that Claudette had done it. Audrey and Nick didn't understand what was going on, so they got some food from the table and listened to Sarah, but again someone knocked on the door before she could say anything. After that, they told Sarah to hide in a different room. Sekou and Amani were there when the door was opened. Then, they told Nick and Audrey that they were sure Francisco was the one who did it. Francisco just got 85 charges because he slept with hundreds of women, and he needed cash to pay for everything. Francisco couldn't believe what he had just heard, so he came out of hiding to deny it all. He then said that Sekou and Amani had taken the girl. He said that Sekou was Maharaja's ex-girlfriend, and that she didn't like the idea of Maharaja marrying Claudette. When Claudette and Sarah heard this, they came out of their hiding place and got into a fight. Happened between them. When Colonel and his men heard the noise coming from the room, they went in to see what was going on. When things settled down, Claudette's cell phone rang out of the blue. She just got a voicemail from someone she didn't know, but when it was played, it was from the person who took the child. It was said that Maharaja would be killed if anyone tried to call the police. The kidnapper also asked for a payment and said he would explain the details the next morning. Nick found his wife sleeping when he heard the message. Suddenly, he felt dizzy. Fainted. The next morning, when Audrey woke up, she was in a panic and woke up Nick right away. She told him that the food that night might have had drugs in it. Then, when the colonel told everyone to go to the beach, they did. They didn't understand why they were called to the beach. Then, a top-notch agent named Miller. Some of his soldiers came out of the water. Miller must have heard about Maharaja's theft last night after hearing the news. Chose to help find the person who did it. Colonel was sure that the case should be handled by someone like Miller. That morning, at 7 a.m., they all got together to hear the kidnappers' call. They were told to come up with a ransom of $70 million and give it to them at night. In France, Paris. After putting together the money and getting to Paris that night, Miller gave Audrey a gun and Claudette's cell phone, which was the only way the attacker could get in touch with her. Would talk to. Miller told them to get out of the car and walk when everything was done. Not to be looked into. When they got to the meeting place, the kidnapper was there with a van and told them to get in. One of the kidnappers changed what they had agreed to do in the middle of the trip. He told Nick to give him the suitcase with the ransom money as soon as possible, but Nick resisted. Instead, he handcuffed the bag to himself and asked them to take him to Maharaja. If they wanted the money, just like the original deal, but one of them asked the other. Nick's hand had to be cut off for the man to get the bag. Nick's fight or flight reaction kicked in when he heard that. He attacked the people who had taken her. All of the people who had taken Maharaja were dead, and they didn't know where he was being held. Miller showed up out of the blue and told them to give him the bag. Nick gave Miller the bag right away, and Miller didn't think anything was wrong. Audrey started to think something was wrong. She thought Miller was doing all of this to get all the money, but when they both got caught. When they looked out the window, Miller's car blew up, proving that their claim was false. Suddenly, a strange man showed up and took the bags away. Nick and Audrey thought the man must have done it, but then a truck showed up. The person and hit them. Someone in a mask got out of the truck, took the bag, and left right away. Audrey wrote down the number on the truck's number plate so she wouldn't lose track of it. Nick and Audrey were about to leave when they turned on the news. It said that both were on the run because they were thought to be the ones who planned the kidnapping of Maharaja. They were surprised to see that, but then Nick suddenly thought of the French inspector who had been there 4 years ago. It helped their argument. They ran to catch up with the inspector. Nick told them the whole story of how Maharaja was taken and asked for the inspector's help so that he could help find the truck that was stolen. They'd already seen. After hearing their story, the inspector decided to help, but he asked them to do a few things first. Tie his hands together so that it looks like he was forced to help them. The inspector didn't want the fact that he was accused of helping a fugitive ruin his image. After being followed, the inspector was able to find where his truck was. Nick and Audrey went there right away. When they got there, they were surprised to find that they were in front of a big house. All of a sudden, Sekou and Amani showed up with a gun and threatened them. Then, they were brought to the house, where Sekou told them that they were not the bad guys. Only because they needed the money did they take the bag. Sekou shot Amani out of the blue and told her she was no longer needed. So that nothing could be found, she chose to burn the whole place down. Shot and was dying, she shot Sekou and killed her right away. After that, the fire got worse, but Audrey and Nick were able to get away. On the street, Audrey called Francisco, the police officer who was questioning Sarah at the time. Claudette and Colonel. Audrey told everyone to meet at the restaurant in the Eiffel Tower because they had a date. Case and that one of them was the person who planned the kidnapping. Everyone met at the diner, just like they did 4 years ago, and Nick and Audrey began to talk. To put the events in order one by one. Suddenly, Maharaja got out of the lift in the middle of the study. Both of them were confused and happy to see Maharaja, but their smiles disappeared all of a sudden when he spoke. Maharaja showed that he was carrying a bomb stick. Maharaja said that if Nick didn't throw the ransom money into the bomb, it would go off. Nick was told to do something in the lift, but he didn't do it. He talked calmly about the small pieces of information he found during the probe. Nick went so far as to promise that the thief wouldn't be brave enough to set off the bomb. He knew that the person who had taken them was there too. Nick told everyone who was there that the kidnapper was when the countdown was almost over. Miller and Nick said that because he was there, Miller didn't dare set off the bomb. Then he showed up and said he would kill everyone if Nick didn't give him the bag. Nick tried to buy some time by asking how he was able to get out of the car after it exploded. Miller then told them that he had purposely blown up his car so that no one would suspect him. When the car blew up, he went into the trunk, which he had made sure was safe from explosions. In the middle of the chaos, someone went to the restaurant and tried to place an order. Miller's attention was taken away, so Nick was quick to pull the trigger. Nick's plan didn't work, and the inspector was shot by mistake. Miller was about to escape with a rope when Audrey jumped and grabbed him. Miller's body without giving it a second thought. Nick ran up to the top floor because he thought his wife was in danger. Nick tried to kill Miller with a gun but missed. Then, he tried to buy some more time by daring Miller to a fight. While this was going on, Audrey tied a rope to her body and tried to escape downstairs. Miller hit her and she fell, so she was hung from the rope. Nick suddenly attacked Miller. Audrey was lucky that she was able to save herself. Miller, who was angry, told the people in his plane to shoot everyone in the food place. He then kept fighting Nick. Not long after that, Audrey came back and tried to shoot Miller, but she hit Nick instead. She had a thought when she saw a rope roller near Miller. Nick tied the other end of the rope to Miller's back while she shot the rope. Miller was pulled by the rope and fell into the propeller of his chopper. All of the people in the chopper died when it hit the tower and fell into the river. Soon after, the ambulance and cops came to the scene to make sure it was safe. When everyone got together, Audrey noticed that Sarah's hand looked very hurt. Told her that it was just henna ink from her brother's wedding that had worn off. When Audrey heard that, she knew something wasn't right. She used henna ink when she worked in a studio, so she knew for sure that if henna ink was safe, it would be safe for skin. If ink has been on the skin for several days, it will dry and not fade. Audrey also remembered that after Maharaja was taken from the wedding, he took a picture of a bloody, burned shawl, and she saw that the spot on Sarah's hand was the same color as the blood on the shawl. Red, just like the blood on the blanket. Audrey was sure that Sarah was one of the people who took Maharaja, and after she was caught, she was sent to jail. Sarah finally admitted that she was the one who planned the theft after being pushed of Maharaja. She also hired Miller and his men to take Maharaja hostage and get the money. As payment, they got money. She wanted to get rid of her own brother so she could keep all of the money. When no one was looking, Sarah grabbed a police gun and tried to shoot right away Maharaja, but the colonel jumped and used his arm to stop the bullet. Then, Claudette hit Sarah on the head, which knocked her out. Everything had come to an end. Nick and Audrey were able to solve a big case once again. Before going back to the US. The next day, Audrey and Nick enjoy a walk around the beautiful. When all of a sudden, a messenger from the Maharaja came to give them a mobile phone. Maharaja told Nick over the phone that he had a small gift for him as a thank you. And Audrey, who helped save his life. The small gift Maharaja gave turned out to be a bag full of cash worth $10 million. Cash worth dollars. Maharaja also joked that if they ran out of money in the future, they could sell the bag for $3 million because it is made from the skin of a rare animal. When the call was over, they kept enjoying the beauty of Paris and hoped that they won't have to deal with any more cases.